Students, welcome to the online class for dissertation. Today we shall discuss case study as a research methodology. So once you are through your literature review, it is the time to start thinking about the study you will design to answer the gap you identified. Which methodology will you use to gather the data for your research? Now you will choose a research method that best aligns with your research questions. So as you were reading the literature, you took a look at the past studies and the focus, or what was the focus of the topic, had some similarity with the literature reviews. So now you will decide what kind of research methodology you see being used most often, and will that suit your study or not? So let us have a look on the basic of research methodologies. Research methodology is a set of systematic technique used in research. This simply means a guide to research and how it is conducted. In educational research, it is usually possible to characterize the research studies in the following methodologies. 1. The qualitative method, 2. the quantitative method, and 3. the mixed methods. The qualitative studies are studies that collect and analyze qualitative data, whereas the quantitative data studies are the studies that collect and analyze the quantitative data. So let's go a little more deeper to the definitions of qualitative, quantitative, and the mixed research methods. The qualitative research is usually described as allowing a detailed exploration of a topic of interest in which the information is collected by a researcher through case studies, ethnographic work, interviews, and so on. The qualitative research method focuses on discovering and understanding the experiences, the perspectives, and the thoughts of the participants. That is, the qualitative research explores the meaning, the purpose, or the reality of your study. There are many other authors and scholars who have defined the qualitative research methods. The context is also very significant in qualitative research. The context includes the environment and conditions in which the study takes place, as well as the culture of the participants and the location. Now, what are the quantitative research methods? Or what is the quantitative research method? This is the method which attempts to maximize the objectivity, replicability, and the generalizability of findings and are typically interested in predictions. Definition of a quantitative research design are complicated by the fact that this term is often used to identify the experimental design reflecting the arrangement of the independent and the dependent variables associated with the data collection. So now here you see the two main variables, the independent and the dependent, which are normally used in an experiment. The dependable variable is that variable which is being tested and measured in scientific research. So this is more of objective answers which we get from a research. In architecture, we may not use the quantitative research method. Next is the mixed methods. The qualitative versus the quantitative debate has coincided with the rapid development of the mixed methods, which combine qualitative and the quantitative method in ways that ostensibly bridge their differences in the service of addressing a research question. So you see, mixed method research allows for the opportunity to compensate for inherent method weaknesses, capitalize on inherent method strength, and offset inevitable method biases. So, it is not that mixed method is the combination of both qualitative and the quantitative data. No. In case of mixed methods, first the qualitative data are collected and analyzed, followed by the collection and the analysis of the quantitative data. So, these two data are then integrated and the findings are interpreted. So, this is how the mixed method works. Now there are these two definitions, methodology and method. Now when you are using these two terms, you should be very clear in case of research. Methodology is the general research strategy that outlines the way in which a research project is to be undertaken and among other things identifies the methods to be used. Whereas the methods describe the methodology, define the means or modes of data collection, or sometimes how a specific result is to be calculated. So methods are the subset of methodology. So finding a research methodology which suits best to your design or to your research. This is very important. So finding a research design methodology is similar to the research process as a whole. First, locate the general information on the research design. Now what is a research design? This is the plan that describes how and when and where the data is to be collected and analyzed. Second, gain the background knowledge of the methodology you feel would more appropriately address the type of data you will be collecting. And finally, choose the methodology and test or measure which could be used in your research. Now in architecture, the best suited method is the case study method, which comes under the qualitative methodology. This is the most frequently used research method in educational research. Case study research is a stand-alone qualitative approach which gives you the maximum of the results. The case study is a data collection method in which in-depth descriptive information about the specific entities or cases is collected, organized, interpreted, and presented in a narrative format. The case study report is essentially a story. A case study is an empirical inquiry and investigates a contemporary phenomena in depth and within its real-life context, especially when the boundaries between the phenomena and the context are not clearly evident and the investigator has little control over the events. So according to these definitions, the case study research, there is no doubt that this is the research strategy is one of the most powerful methods and which is very frequently used by researchers to realize both practical and the theoretical aims. Now, what is the strength of these case study research? As per Meredith, there are three outstanding strengths of the case study research. First, the phenomena can be studied in its natural setting and meaningful relevant theory generated from the understanding gained through observing actual practice. Secondly, the case study method allows the questions of why, what and when to be answered with a relatively full understanding of the nature and the complexity of the complete phenomena, and the case method lends itself to early exploratory investigations where variables are still unknown and the phenomena is not understood. So useful research strategy, that is the case study strategy or the case study research strategy. Duke and Hack in 2008 noted that the most researchers considered case study research as a useful research strategy. Why? Because when the topic is broad and when there is not a lot of theory available, and when the context is very important. There are various types of case study research also, which has been categorized or which has been defined by many scholars. One of them, Jewell and Hack, categorizes the case study research as a single case study and the comparative case study. According to Zanel, other categories include imperative and evaluative case studies. According to Stake, the case study research are intrinsic, instrumental, and collective. Whereas Ian has identified some specific types of case study research like the exploratory, explanatory, and descriptive. So what do you understand out of this? In architectural case studies, using the case study research as a methodology, we have two types basically, a single case study or a multiple case study, which may follow a replication logic. That means either you take one case study and do your whole of your study, or you can have number of or multiple case studies. However, doing or taking a single case study may not give you an exact situation or the exact picture of the case. So what type of cases you need to select? The researcher will select cases that represent other cases but will also look for a variety to ensure a wider perspective. In a comparative study, it will be important to standardize relevant characteristics of the cases. The data must also be accessible. That is, the persons involved are willing to spend time with the researcher and data can be obtained relatively easily. It may be more valuable to learn much from an unusual case than from a little typical case. So whenever you are selecting a case study case for your research, you should look for at least these characteristics for the particular study. So what are the methodology for conducting the case study research? Again, there are a few researchers or the scholars who have defined the different methodology for conducting the case study. Ian says it as design the case study first, then conduct the case study, then analyze the case study, and develop the conclusions, recommendations, and the implications. Whereas Merriam says, first you do a literature review, then construct the theoretical framework, identify a research problem, crafting and sharpening the research questions, selecting the sample, purposive sampling. So these are the different steps to conduct the case study. So you can select any of them, or even you can add some more steps to these and conduct your case study. The next very important part comes in case study research is the data collection. How you collect the data. Whenever you are going for a case study, the first thing is the observation. That is the visual survey you do. You look at the particular, if it's a purely architectural, you look at the building and have the visual survey. Second is the interview, where some questions need to be asked to the people who are using that particular building maybe. Also, there could be different sets of users. So you have a very elaborate interview sessions with the different people and collect the data. Then could be the document review. Whatever documents are available for that particular building or for that particular case, whatever archival records are available for the case. Then also you can record the participants' observations. So what do they observe for that particular case? So you may use multiple sources of data as a part of your data collection. Then you create a case study database and also maintain a chain of evidence. So now you must have done a lot of architectural studies, meaning by a lot of case studies which has been associated to your studio problems. Now, how you will differentiate the dissertation from your studio-based work? What could be the difference between the case study in case of a studio and in case of a dissertation? When you are writing a dissertation, you are writing a complete story. That story must have evolved from your research questions. So now the questions could be put in different groups, like the question of the interpretations. What are those questions of interpretations? Like what kind of design ideas can be related to this architecture, or what ideas from the outside of the architecture can be related to it, or how are these ideas manifested in the architecture? Are they visible? How does architecture compare with other examples of its type? How is it different? What is it trying to avoid, or what is it trying to prove? What have the people said about the architecture? Why was this? What is the significance of this architecture when it was built? Has the significance changed over the years? So these are the different interpretive questions which should arise from your research questions. Then a different set of questions, like the question of production. How was the architecture constructed? Who was involved? Where is it? Why is it? When it was built? How was it paid for? Who paid for it? Has it been altered after its original construction? What were the main intentions of the architects and other producers? Where did these ideas come from? What is the function of the architecture? Who benefited from this architecture? In what way? Then there is different set of questions of reception and experience. What is architecture like to look at? Can you experience architecture other than by looking? Is it different on the inside? Is it different when you move around? Is it different in the flesh from its representation in books and articles? How do other media, example, films, novels, etc., represent this architecture? Who are the different people who have experienced this architecture over the time? How will you convey your experience to the architecture? So you see, there are so many set of questions which could be evolved out of your research questions, which you must have framed in your research. Another set of questions are questions of use. What are the intended use of architecture? What was the actual use? Who used it? What were the different groups of users? How did they differ from one another? When was it used? Did use change over the time? How and why? What is the use of architecture today? So you see, these are all the different set of questions which you may find the answer or may not also. Maybe they may be relevant to your study or may not. So the questions which you choose should be very appropriate and help you in analyzing. So the next step is the data analysis. Data analysis consists of examining, categorizing, tabulating, or recombining the evidence to address the initial proposition of the study. So the most frequently again used analysis for the case study research methodology is the cross-case analysis. In other words, it's the comparative analysis, where we have a different or a few number of case studies, and also we have a set of standards. So we compare all these different case studies with the standards and finally come out with some kind of inferences and conclusions. So the data analysis and qualitative research will proceed hand in hand with other parts of the developing the qualitative study, namely the data collection and the write-ups of the findings. So how you analyze the data and how you come up with the writing. What are the different steps for it? Step 1 is to organize and prepare the data for analysis. Whatever answers you got through your different set of questions, you need to organize all of them before going for the data analysis. Second step is a read or look at all the data. It gives a general sense of information and an opportunity to reflect on it for the overall meaning. Step 3 is to start coding all of the data. How does it help? By coding the different data which falls under different categories may or could be brought into some coherence with each other, and it becomes easy to compare. Step 4 is the use of coding process to generate the description of the setting or people as well as categorize or themes for analysis. So you need to generate some themes or categories, and these themes are the ones that appear as a major finding in the qualitative research. Step 5 is the advance how the description of the themes will be represented in the qualitative narrative. So the narrative passages are the most popular approach to convey the finding of the analysis, which could be strengthened through illustrations, figures, and tables, etc. And finally, step 6, which involves making an interpretation in qualitative research of the finding or result, and finally asking what were the lessons learned, captures the essence of this idea. So I hope you understood all these 6 steps will help to do your analysis and come out with some kind of result and some kind of lessons you would have learned out of this research. So students, the methodology may seem a little daunting at first, but they are not meant to be overly problematic for you when you are thinking about your dissertation. It is important that you know why you have chosen a particular subject and how to go theoretically or with a theoretical framework. Through the framework, explain, explore, challenge, theorize or imagine architecture. Because dissertation means writing the report. Starting with your synopsis, then the literature, then the case studies, all 3 parts make the base for your dissertation, and then your analysis and the data interpretation makes the story complete. So this is all about the case study methodology. I hope you have enjoyed as well as understood the case study research method. So these are certain references, the books which you may also refer.